You are exceedingly practical scientism.
No, not scientism.
Answers.
Scientism. You don't get to just make up words in order to knock down straw
May I ask? I just want to verify. Has this caller insulted us enough? Has this caller insulted us enough that we may now insult him in return?
Probably.
I would very much like to.
Probably. Really let me tell you my argument.
Charles,
you haven't got one, dude. That's the problem.
Hang on. Everybody stop. Charles, a minute ago, you said that you know that humans are more.
No, that's not what I said. I said I know that there are non-material things that the materialist structure doesn't allow for, that I know.
Okay. How do you know this?
Because I've had direct experience with them, as have you. Would you like the example?
Sure. I'd like an argument, not an example.
Okay. Well, I take it for granted that you've read a novel.
Yes.
Okay. Where was that novel located when you read it?
In my hands.
Well, that's where the text was.
That's
and I'm
correct.
The distinction between.
That's correct. I had a conceptual perception of the novel. It existed only as a physical brain state, and if you think there was more to it,
that isn't sufficient. That isn't sufficient because.
How do you know it's not sufficient? How do you know it's not sufficient?
Because it doesn't take into account the two different minds that are involved in the ultimate fruition of the novel. To say that it's a brain state for you isn't sufficient to take into account that brain which created it, that mind. Which
the brain that created it, brain that created it, has one conception of the novel. And the guy that reads it has a different conception of the novel.
No, that's inaccurate. That's really a rudimentary, insufficient understanding of it.
Really?
Because the object itself is not reducible.
It's not an object. It's
Let me say this: tree, Matt Dillahunty, tree. What just happened? I'm not very specific.
You said a word that conveyed an idea in the English language, which brought into you're going to let me finish, or am I going to hang up on your ass? Which brought into my head the concept of a plant. What there is in my head as a physical brain state, because of what you said, the concept. You do not get to conflate your idea of a tree with my idea of a tree, and then say that because there are two ideas of a tree, there's something we can't explain. Because you got a brain, despite evidence to the contrary, and so do I.
I think you're missing the point.
Okay.
I mean, you're doing the same thing you're doing, which is interrupting me,
dude. We have
because the edges of perception, the basis of our understanding, were hemmed in by illusions of meaning that materialism can't explain. It's not a sufficient framework. If I say, I believe in a non-material being called God...
No, you are asserting that it is impossible.
Material science doesn't allow for that.
No, sir. No, sir. You are asserting that it is impossible, materialistically, to account for thought. Please demonstrate that this is true, and not just a flat frickin' assertion from you.
I did not say that. I said it is impossible to account for the thing called a novel. You're talking about thought. I'm talking about the novel.
The novel.
Now here's what I'm
saying. That is an abstract concept.
I'm not suggesting. I'm sorry?
The novel, as you're using it, is an abstract concept. I'm talking about...
I don't believe in the ghetto of conception like you do. I don't believe that love is just a chemical fever with all this other poetic baggage.
What else is it, and how do you know that it's more?
You know what I think is dangerous? You know what I think is dangerous? I think it's dangerous for us to be living in a world where we are in fact discovering the physical basis for things. And there's people like you. There's people like you. Yo, hey, you called us to call us dangerous. Right back at you. Okay? Cavemen like you who want to reject what has actually been discovered because it kind of creeps you out.
What has been discovered?
You are
What has been discovered? What are you talking about?
We know vast amounts about how the brain works.
I'm not talking about the brain.
I'm
talking about the mind.
I had my say, and you've had your say over and over and over again.
What is the mind? What is the mind?
Rather ineptly,
what is the mind? What is the mind?
What is the mind? That's a great question. And because I'm a solipsist, because I am uncertain...
You're a solipsist?
I'm trapped like most people...
Wow. Why didn't you start? If you're a solipsist, we're all just figments of your frickin' imagination anyway, so why don't you stay home and mentally masturbate instead of calling and wasting time on our show?
ask yourself why you're imagining, a couple of guys like us who are going to sit here and argue with you. If in fact, the entire universe is just, an imaginary creation of your own.
Yeah.
Wow.
Until you actually demonstrate that something that you want to label a mind actually exists as a thing, now you're just talking about abstracts, and it's a waste of our time, which is why we went round and round. Yeah, enough of that.